Morning everybody, it is Thursday the 7th of May. We're planning today to go, I think, to 4 castles. I think one of them's called the Bishop's Palace or something, but it looks like a castle to me. It's grey and it's ruined and you can walk around it. I'm sure I put a map up, so we are right down in the southwest of Wales. And it strikes me there are sort of 2 or 3 things that you can do around here. It is not a place with lots of seaside towns. You've got beaches galore, gorgeous beaches, but they're all very remote. There's nothing there. You go there and you kind of, I don't know, you either surf or you have a barbecue or something, but you don't go there and then walk along the prom and have fish and chips or have donuts. There isn't anything to do there. They are beaches. There are cliffs. Absolutely amazing cliffs, and you can again go for walks along the cliff, but there's nothing there. We seem to have been going to remote beaches for walks or castles, and that seems to be the running theme of this holiday, and it's brilliant. I'm not saying it's bad, we're loving it, absolutely loving it. The house is gorgeous. It's one of those things where you have to get used to how quiet it is, but we are loving it. Castle 1, Thursday the 7th of May, we are at Carew Castle. We were heading for Pembroke, but we decided we would take a right-hand turn. We just saw the sign, we didn't know exactly where we were, we saw the sign, we saw they had a tea room, so we thought we'd come in. That was 2 hours ago. It is brilliant. The car park is free, it's £9 to get in, but you get into the castle and there is a mill at the bottom of the lake behind the castle, and you get entry to both of them. So it's £9 to get in. I would say it's a lot of money, but it's absolutely worth it. Absolutely brilliant. The lady in the gift shop was fantastic. I was chatting to her for ages. Definitely somewhere you should come and see. So, welcome to Carew Castle, which is on the banks of Carew River and next to Carew Tidal Mill, and tidal being the operative word. As you can see, the riverbank or the river bed was almost entirely empty, and I was assured by the woman that I spoke to in the mill that there are times when this is completely full, which would make the mill make sense. We were in the mill and there was barely anything happening, and you couldn't believe that the water would be strong enough to power a mill. And she said, no, honestly, when the tide is in, and it is tidal, when the tide is in, the river comes right up to the top of the banks. So if you're thinking of visiting, and I would thoroughly recommend it, it's fantastic. There are a few things that I can tell you. You can get in everything that you have just seen. This is the entrance from the car park. You walk down this pathway and the first thing you come to actually is the tea room or the gift shop, and there are a couple of things there, and you walk through and that's where you get your tickets to get in. And this is the main entrance. I can't think there was anywhere in this castle that you were not able to access. This was yet another castle where I had far too much video, and I've tried to cut it down to a point where it's interesting and informative. They have gone to great lengths to make your visit as enjoyable and informative as possible. Almost everywhere you went had a barcode on it, and if you scan the barcode, you would go to a website, or it would come up with a vocal tour and somebody would talk you around where you were and tell you all about it. I obviously didn't do any of that because I just wander around and go, look at that. I did read a couple of things. This is another one of those castles where it was built originally to be a big burly affair that could withstand people attacking it. And then it got into the hands of, shall we say in the latter days, the more dandy of gentlemen, and they didn't like big burly castles. They liked windows. They wanted to make the best of this aspect that we're looking at the moment. And there was a new thing called glass that had been invented, and they wanted big windows to prove to the world how wealthy they were and get the best of the views. As you can see here, this is the Elizabethan Hall. I think that just said, I didn't even read it as I was showing you it. Yeah, Elizabethan Hall. These things are not easy to defend. They may look fantastic for the shortest period of time, but if you are attacking a castle and you've got a big thick wall on one side and a lovely thin wall with a massive glass window on the other, you're going to attack the tiny little wall with the windows, so it didn't last very long. And now we find ourselves at Mill, looking back at the castle, and we found this fascinating. We're always talking about this, the sheer majesty of the architecture and the ability of these people. This is a 12th or a 13th century castle, and they were able to dam what is quite a sizable river and turn it into something that they could utilise. And they built this mill. Now, I think I said the entrance price was £9.50 to get in, and it might have felt a bit steep, but you had access to the castle, and it would have been worth going in the castle alone. But you also had access to the mill. There was a lovely lady on reception, and we were talking about various things to do with the local area, and then you were able to walk around the entire mill, and it's set over 4 floors, I want to say, ground, first, second, third. And as you can see, you were able to walk around. We were ever so lucky. We were the only ones in there, so we had kind of unfettered access to absolutely everything. Take a look. As usual, I just walked around. I did read a few things, but I just walked around and looked and kind of remembered Blue Peter and thought, yeah, I know what that is. But it's still fascinating, and I believe it may not work today, but it all still works, if you know what I mean. And once again, this gives you an idea of just how long you can spend in there were you to pay attention to everything that you are looking at and not just wander around like a gormless moron like me. You can still see the castle out of the window. There are some quite magnificent views as you look over the river, and obviously you can look in both directions, and the river becomes fuller downwind of the dam, if that's the right terminology. And all this information shows you how the mill works and the design of the dam itself. Castle number 2 on Thursday is the Lamphey Bishop's Palace. So if you look it up on Google, it doesn't come up as a castle. If you just do a search for castles, it doesn't necessarily come up. But you'll find it is literally about 12 minutes drive from where we've just come from, Carew Castle, which has become my favourite of the trip so far. But this one is really brilliant, and it's free. It's sort of down the driveway of a Best Western hotel, and there's just a bit of gravel area that you park at, and it's free to get in. And I like it all the more for that. Now then, would it be unfair to say, large space, not much to it? You can see pretty much everything. Off to the left, it was a bit strange. I didn't really see what it was. I didn't dare go near it. I got too nervous, but there was a bit of a workshop. I think it was an artist was working in a building. You can just see those dark brown huts in the corner. Everything else was tucked over in this corner. Now that's not to suggest it is not worth visiting. I thought it was brilliant. It was really interesting, the contrast between what was definitely defined as a palace, although it is fortified. To me it looks like a castle, it feels like a castle, but it was defined and described as a palace. And you could see, again, there were the similar kind of traits to what we saw at Carew Castle. There were these, archways. I'll refer to the archways in a minute. Apparently that was a real flamboyance. And then these very large windows, very ornate windows, and I'm sure they would have had the best of glass in them. It was a show of power as opposed to a show of financial power as opposed to a show of physical power. So I think I said on one of the previous videos that one of the castles had been taken over in more recent times by the bishop. This was always built as the bishop's palace. This room, this hall, was apparently originally a wine cellar. Again, such opulence that they needed such a large space. It was converted to servants' quarters later on, which is why we saw the fireplace halfway down. And again, this castle, or this palace, feels as though we are moving forwards through time. We're at a time when men have stopped dressing in suits of armour and have started dressing more elaborately and more flamboyantly. And the castle, or the building itself, was more flamboyant. We had arches, we had large windows, we had plaster on the wall. That's what I was just pointing to. So I headed up these stairs in complete innocence. you'll be able to hear the sound of babies, hungry babies. I wasn't paying attention and I did not hear that. Well, this isn't for the faint of heart. I don't think he's very happy with me. I don't know where his babies are. I think we're going to leave him alone. I'm going. So I did buy a book from another castle, but it covers this one. And it talks about the area that the bishop, whatever the word is, presided over. Almost like a royal. He had absolute power over an enormous part of Carmarthenshire. And he would have several of these palaces, and he would travel around. And I assume collect taxes or whatever it was that bishops did in those days. Probably wasn't very nice. Latrine, do we think? Or a defensive point? But they certainly lived the life of Riley, with palaces like this, very, very heavily fortified, even though it is clearly not necessarily a castle. And yeah, archways, a sign of wealth. So, just down the road from Carew Castle, on the way to Pembroke and Pembroke Castle, and free, totally worth a visit. You find us in tightwad mode. We are at Pembroke, in Pembroke. We're at Pembroke Castle, which is magnificent, but it's £13 to get in. And when you've been to a lot of castles in the week and they've either been free or £5 or £6 and this one's 13, you think, how good is it going to be? What is going to be different that is going to make it worth £13? So depending on whether we go in or not, this will either be us saying we walked around the outside and it was okay, or you probably won't even see this and we'll come out going, wow, that was amazing, it was totally worth £13. I haven't decided yet what we're going to do. I have to say Pembroke isn't the nicest of places. We've just had lunch in a cafe, which was okay, very nice, but it's not the nicest of places, it's just a typical town, so we're not warming to it. So we paid our £13. Is it worth it? I don't know, we've been here 5 minutes. There's no getting away from the fact it's spectacular. I reckon on first sight it's on a par with Carnarvon. If you've ever been to Carnarvon Castle, it's huge. I'll let you know what I think about whether it's worth coming in a moment. But like I say, £13 to get in each. The main reason we came in was because we couldn't think of anything else to do. Which is terrible, really, isn't it? But there's no getting away from the fact that it is enormous and it feels like you can get anywhere. We'll just do a little critique of Pembroke while we're up here, I think. I have to say, I'm warming to the castle. I'm beginning to see why it's £13, but if I'm pointing in the right place, that is the high street, and we'll call it a high street. We stopped in a museum and there was a cafe in there. Might be able to see it slightly better now, so yeah, up there is the high street. I hope I'm pointing in the right direction. As I say, we found a little museum and they had a cafe in there, and it was ever so nice, really nice staff, good food, but the rest of the high street looked like any high street you can imagine, which, as I say, is kind of why we came into the castle in the end, because we've travelled quite a way to get here and it felt like a bit of a a waste of time. So we thought, well, we've got to come in the castle. That's got to be the whole reason for coming. But I would say, yes, it is worth £13. Pembroke Castle, what's my conclusion? I don't think it's worth £13, but I think that's more a reflection of me. I think if you invest in it, I think if you give your all to it, there are free guided tours, there is information, there are displays, interactive displays. I didn't do any of that, so that's on me. I think if you do all of those things, you'll find that £13 is perfectly reasonable. It is phenomenal. I'll show you where I'm sat now, so you can go all the way up there, you can go up to the top of that castle, you can go up to the top of that turret, you can go up to the top of almost every single one that you can see, including that one there. So for me, not worth £13. For most people, almost definitely, it's one of the best castles I've been to in a long time. Not my favourite, but as I said earlier, up there with Carnarvon. Absolutely fantastic. Now then, we thought we would end the day on a high, so we went back to Broadhaven, where we'd been the previous day. We thought we were going to have a fantastic sunset. It turned out we knew we were going to have a fantastic sunset, because as you can see, it was a fantastic sunset. And we'd seen kind of sign that if we walked out of the north side of Broadhaven, there was quite a high cliff with an accessible path and lots of rock formations that we would be able to look at. Now, we were originally planning, I think we had a walk of maybe an hour, a mile and a half, so it was going to be about a 3-mile walk all told. We got to this stack and said, "That'll do, pig." And I got brave with my drone. I keep saying that I love photography. I love taking pictures of things, and we tend to go to the same place over and over and over, and the photos all tend to be very familiar. A drone gives you the ability to look at things from a different angle. I am not, and this won't be a surprise to anybody who's seen any of my videos, a good drone flyer. I don't give it the time to learn to fly around like you see these people do. But I love the difference in the angles and the aspects from which you are able to take video and photos. You would never be able to see this without a helicopter or a drone, and it's quite stunning. Morning, everybody. It's Friday the 8th of May. Technically it's our last day. We go home tomorrow. We went to Broadhaven again for sunset last night. So we went up there. We had the most glorious sunset, so I'll stick some pictures up of that if I haven't already. Absolutely stunning. Really, really lovely. So that was great. Today, there are these big grey things in the sky. And I think we're in for a mixed bag today. So we're going to go north. We're going to go to the north part of this part of Wales. I keep saying that because it's hardly Anglesey, but you know what I mean. So we're going to go north. We're going to go to Poppet Sands. And then obviously we're going to go to a castle, which I can't remember the name of, but I'll talk about it when we're there. We might go down the coast to Porthgain. There's a fantastic chip shop in Porthgain and quite a bit to see. So we might try and go down there and then go to a place called the Blue Lagoon. But we shall see how the day pans out. Welcome to Cilgerran Castle, which is on the Lamphey River. We're in Cilgerran Castle, which you can probably see behind me. But more fascinating is the drop down here. What a place to have a castle. The trees kind of spoil the view of the depth, but I think you can get a sense of just how far that drops down there. So welcome again to Cilgerran Castle. As you can see, the fortress part of the castle was pretty much a triangle, two sides of which faced directly onto the river, and then we have this incredibly fortified twin tower aspect facing towards the land. And it was an entirely different construction to any castle I have ever seen. It was pretty much, as I could make out, slate. And it was thin layers of slate piled up on top of each other. Now, I don't know if that necessitated the thickness of the walls, but it felt incredibly rugged compared to the other castles. And once again, this is my favourite kind of castle because it's completely free to get in, and it looks like you can go anywhere. Now, I did do a bit of a voiceover while I was recording this, but there were other people in the castle, and I still get a little bit embarrassed about what I'm doing, and it was too quiet, so I've deleted it. But I'm saying here about the Lamphey River, it was very difficult to see the river because of the trees and everything, but it flows through the Lamphey Gorge, and that's what makes this such a perfect position for the castle. So this is a fantastic visit. It's a great place to come, but there aren't many concessions to visitors. I'll talk in a moment about parking, which is very difficult, and yet they've built these walkways across the two towers to make it easier. I'm talking here about the features within the wall. You can clearly see that there would have been 3 floors. You can see where the joists would have gone. And then there are these features within the walls. From what I could read, these are living spaces. They were designed to be living spaces. You were designed to sit or sleep in these spaces and be protected from the elements. You can see there that clearly looks like a bench. And then, as I was saying, there aren't many concessions for the visitor, and that includes parking. Now, I've been reading on Google reviews. Some people are saying it was incredibly difficult. Other people are saying the car park is great. Now, we tried to get to this car park. We went down that road, as you can see, off of the main road. We met another car coming the other way, and there was not room for both of us. So I bottled it, and I turned around, and we parked on the main road. I'm not sure that's the right way to do it, but we did not find that car park. As I say, this is a fantastic castle to visit. That apparently was a doorway out. There would have been a stairway up, which I think would be a defensive failure. But that's what it said. And again, reiterating that these were apparently sleeping quarters. After leaving Cilgerran Castle, we headed north. We didn't go into Cardigan. I think the weather was closing in, so we went straight to Poppet Sands before the rain got to us. Now, we weren't bowled over. You can tell by the complete lack of video. It's a lovely beach. It's a lovely expanse of sand. There's a huge amount of wood lying jettisoned. It obviously washes in on the tide and makes for some fantastic photos. However, what I really loved was, as we walked onto the beach, I turned to my left and saw this house and thought, "Cool, that didn't half look like a flump." So I asked Gemini to turn it into a flump, and that made my day. By now we were getting a bit hungry, so we headed down to Porthgain. We knew that there was a wonderful fish restaurant in Porthgain. It's this charming little harbour with a few houses, a pub and this restaurant. So we had lunch in the restaurant, fantastic fish and chips. And then we decided we could walk along the coast to the Blue Lagoon. So you walk around the harbour and you head up this fairly steep set of steps that brings you to the top of the cliff, and then it's the same old story. Unbelievable views, beautiful crystal clear waters, and as you'll see, the weather got better, the sun came out, and we had the best afternoon. And you'll be glad to know I've saved you about an hour's footage of magnificent cliffs and beautiful views. And this is us arriving at the Blue Lagoon. I thought you could get over there. I'm guessing you have to come around. That is the Blue Lagoon right there. I'm guessing you have to come around there and then climb up this to get out there. Can I be bothered? That's the question. I could sort of scoot down here as well, but I'm not sure. So this is Aberidi Tower. It's a navigation marker for vessels, so I assume it's a form of lighthouse. What I would love to know is, what state was this cliff in? Did they know they were building it in such a precarious position, or has that happened since they built it? And then you come across the Blue Lagoon. Now, anybody who's watched my video about Easdale Island will be familiar with the concept. This is clearly a quarry or a mine, and it has collapsed and been washed in by a high tide. And now I've seen pictures, we didn't do it on this day, but I've seen pictures of people swimming and canoeing and diving in there. I am going to go out on a limb here and try and pronounce this correctly. I think it's Cilgerran Beach. I'd say Llyfn, but I think it's a double L, so it's a K or K. Anyway, enough of that. This is that beach. We are the only ones here. The forecast said rain. It is glorious. It's about 16 degrees. It is absolutely stunning. So, you have to come down those steps. We were walking along, we've kind of come, well, all the way from wherever it is it there? We've come from that little tower there, and we've walked all the way around. Now obviously we've got to go back up. I think it's about 1 million steps. And then we'll kind of head that way over towards Porthgain. But this could not be more perfect. Aside from the fact that I need a wee. But I always do. I will say the water is a touch chilly. I couldn't take it. I did go in. I'm about to go in again, but it's a spot on the chilly side. But where else apart from Scotland can you find beaches as perfect as this? And you are on your own. We're about a mile from Porthgain. We're about a mile from the Blue Lagoon where we've just come from. So it's relatively easy to get here. So I sent the drone up. There were some caves that we had glimpses of when we were walking down to the Blue Lagoon, but I couldn't quite get my drone around to them to make it worth showing. So I flew it around the beach a little bit, and then we made our way back to Porthgain. So as I said, it was about a mile back to Porthgain. Lovely walk along the cliff, and you know when you're back because you see these two markers. I can't really find anything online about them, but they were markers to indicate the entrance to the harbour. So I'm hoping these videos give you a feel for what Pembrokeshire is like, and hopefully, or I would imagine, you've come to one of two conclusions. You either think it looks absolutely fantastic, or you think it looks dull as dishwater. We thought it was fantastic. It blew us away. The cliffs are like nothing we've ever seen before. It's relatively accessible. There's so much to do as long as you like walking around cliffs and castles and beaches and coastal walks. And then, similar to Porthgain that I showed you in a previous video up in Anglesey, there is this brickworks. And once again, I can find very little anywhere to explain anything about it. It's much bigger than Porthgain, but you get much less access. The only thing I could think to do was fly the drone over. You cannot get around the back, you cannot get inside. It's nothing like the one up on Anglesey. And sadly, that was the end of the day and pretty much the end of our week. Now there is a part 4 to come, and it will be our journey home, because strangely, and I'm not just talking about driving through the Welsh hills, it was a real up and down day, and we did so much that I thought I'd actually put it in its own little video at the end. And so with that, I'll say thank you very much for watching. I always appreciate it, and I will say increasingly I'm appreciating people leaving comments. I really appreciate any advice about where you think I could go next, or any thoughts about places that you've seen in the videos. So thank you so much for that. And part 4 will follow soon.